There is a place inside your mind that almost no one dares to visit. It has no walls, no doors, no name. Yet every decision you've ever made has come from there. It is where your greatest dreams were born. It is where your deepest fears still live. It remembers every heartbreak, every betrayal, every embarrassing moment, every victory, and every lie you've ever told yourself. Most of us spend our lives living on its surface, busy, distracted, always moving, rarely stopping long enough to look beneath, because deep down, we're afraid of what we might find. Imagine standing on the edge of a vast ocean. From where you stand, everything appears peaceful. The waves rise and fall. The sunlight dances across the water. It looks beautiful. But anyone who has ever sailed the sea knows the surface tells you almost nothing. Beneath it, there are currents strong enough to drag down entire ships, creatures that never see the light, treasures hidden for centuries, and dangers you never knew existed. Now imagine that this ocean isn't somewhere in the world. Imagine it is inside you. Every thought you've forgotten, every emotion you've buried, every dream you've abandoned, every wound you've refused to heal, still there, waiting. Thousands of years ago, long before psychology, long before neuroscience, long before anyone spoke about the subconscious mind, ancient sages from India told a remarkable story. At first glance, it seems impossible. Gods and demons working together, a mountain placed inside an ocean, a giant serpent wrapped around it, a deadly poison capable of destroying the universe, and finally, a mysterious nectar that grants immortality. For generations, people have treated it as mythology, a beautiful story, nothing more. But what if we've misunderstood it completely? What if this wasn't written to explain the universe, but to explain you? What if every character, every object, every event was carefully chosen to describe something happening inside your own mind every single day? And if that's true, then one question becomes impossible to ignore. Why, before wisdom, before peace, before enlightenment, before the nectar, did the ancient story insist that poison had to appear first? That is the mystery. And once you understand the answer, you may never see yourself the same way again. Every great story begins when something is broken. This one is no different. There was a time when even the Devas, the guardians of harmony, began losing their strength. Day by day, their power faded. The balance of the universe started to collapse. On the other side stood the Asuras, driven by ambition, by power, by desire. They too wanted the same thing: to become unstoppable, to conquer time itself. Both sides searched for a solution. The answer they received was unexpected. If you seek true power, you must churn the ocean of milk. For hidden within its depths lies Amrita, the nectar of immortality. It sounded simple, until they realized one impossible truth. No single force could churn the ocean alone. Not even the Devas, not even the Asuras. For the first time, enemies became partners. They would have to work together, Not because they trusted each other, but because some treasures can only be reached through opposing forces. They searched for something large enough to churn an entire ocean. They chose Mount Mandara, a mountain so vast that lifting it seemed impossible. Together, they carried it. But the moment they placed it into the ocean, it began to sink. The mountain disappeared beneath the waves. The task had failed before it had even begun. Then something extraordinary happened. Lord Vishnu appeared in the form of Kurma, the great cosmic tortoise. He descended beneath the ocean, lifting the mountain onto his back. Now, the mountain stood firm, but another problem remained. How do you turn a mountain? Again. The answer came from somewhere unexpected. The mighty serpent, Vasuki. His enormous body became the rope. The Devas grasped one end, the Asuras held the other. Then, they began to pull, back and forth. Again and again, the mountain turned. The ocean roared, clouds darkened the sky, the earth trembled, the heavens watched in silence. The effort continued, not for minutes, not for days, but for what seemed like an eternity. Every pull stirred something deeper. Every turn awakened something hidden. Everyone expected the first gift to be glorious. Perhaps gold, perhaps jewels, perhaps the nectar itself. Instead, the ocean screamed. A dark cloud spread across the sky. The waters turned black. From the depths emerged something no one had expected. Hala hala, a poison so terrifying that its mere presence began destroying everything around it. The air itself became toxic. The rivers darkened. The heavens trembled. The Devas stepped back. The Asuras fled. No one knew what to do. Think about that for a moment. They had searched for immortality and found death. They had worked together only to unleash destruction. Imagine standing there, watching the ocean, watching hope turn into horror. If you had been there, what would you have thought? Probably the same thing we all would. We made a mistake. We should never have started. But what if the poison wasn't the mistake? What if it was the first sign that the churning was actually working? And if that's true, then perhaps the real question isn't, why did poison appear? Perhaps the real question is, why does every attempt to change ourselves seem to make life more difficult before it gets better? Because that is exactly where the ancient story begins to reveal its greatest secret. Have you ever noticed something strange? The moment you decide to improve your life, life often seems to become more difficult. You decide to meditate, and suddenly your mind becomes noisier than ever. You begin therapy, and old memories you thought were gone come rushing back. You finally leave a toxic relationship only to discover that the pain follows you. You promise yourself you'll stop reacting with anger, and somehow you become even more aware of how often you lose your temper. Why does this happen? Shouldn't healing make us feel better? Shouldn't growth bring peace? Then why Does it sometimes begin with chaos? The ancient sages believed this wasn't a mistake. It was a law. Think about the ocean once more. For countless ages, its depths remained undisturbed. Everything hidden, stayed hidden. The poison didn't suddenly appear because someone created it. It appeared because someone finally stirred the depths. Now ask yourself, when was the last time you truly looked within? Not your social media profile, not your career, not your achievements. You, the person behind all of it. Most of us don't. We stay busy. We distract ourselves. We fill every quiet moment with noise, music, television, notifications, conversations, work, anything, to avoid sitting alone with our own thoughts. Because deep inside, we fear what we might discover. But the mind has an interesting habit. Whatever you refuse to face doesn't disappear. It waits, like sediment settling quietly at the bottom of a lake. The water above may appear crystal clear, but disturb it, and suddenly everything becomes cloudy. The cloudiness isn't new. It was always there. You simply never saw it. Perhaps that's why the ancient story begins with poison. Because transformation doesn't create your darkness. It reveals it. The anger you feel, the fear you carry, the guilt you hide, the jealousy you deny, the shame you've buried. None of it appeared because you began healing. It appeared because healing finally reached the place where those emotions had been hiding. Modern psychology gives this many names: the unconscious, emotional repression, trauma, shadow patterns, different words, the same observation. What remains hidden continues to influence your life. Without realizing it, you begin protecting yourself from people who never intended to hurt you. You repeat the same relationship, the same argument, the same fear, again and again. Not because life is punishing you, but because the poison beneath the surface has never truly been seen. The ancient sages understood something extraordinary. Before wisdom can emerge, illusion must be disturbed. Before peace can arrive, the inner storm must reveal itself. Before the nectar comes the poison. And perhaps that is why so many people abandon their journey of self-discovery. They mistake the appearance of poison for failure, when in reality, it is often the first evidence that real transformation has finally begun. But the story is about to become even stranger, because when the poison appeared, no one could destroy it. Not the Devas, not the Asuras, not even Vishnu. Only one being stepped forward. And what he did next may be the greatest lesson on emotional mastery ever told. The poison spread faster than anyone imagined. It consumed the air. It poisoned the rivers. The earth itself began to tremble. Even the Devas, the guardians of harmony, couldn't contain it. The Asuras, who had dreamed of immortality, stood helpless before it. For a brief moment, everyone understood the same terrifying truth. This poison could destroy everything. Then, something unexpected happened. Shiva stepped forward, not as a warrior, not as a conqueror, simply as someone willing to face what everyone else feared. The Devas watched, the Asuras watched, the universe watched. Everyone expected Shiva to destroy the poison. After all, isn't that what heroes do? Destroy evil, erase suffering, eliminate pain. But Shiva did something no one expected. He lifted the poison and drank it. For a moment, it seemed as though he had sacrificed himself. But then something extraordinary happened. The poison stopped at his throat. It never entered his heart. It never entered his mind. It never became part of who he was. His throat turned blue, but the poison never controlled him. That image may be one of the most profound lessons ever hidden inside an ancient story, because life does the same thing to every one of us. At some point, someone hands you poison. Maybe it comes as betrayal. A friend lies to you. Someone you trusted walks away. Maybe it comes as humiliation, words spoken in anger that stay with you for years. Maybe it comes as rejection, failure, loss, grief, abandonment. Pain arrives, whether we invite it or not. But from that moment onward, your life is shaped by a single choice. What will you do with it? Some people swallow it. The bitterness reaches their heart. Slowly, they become suspicious of everyone. They stop trusting. They stop loving. The poison changes them. Others cannot bear the weight, so they pass it on. Someone hurts them. They hurt someone else. A father shouts at his son because his own father shouted at him. A stranger is rude because someone was rude to them earlier that day. Pain travels from one person to another, generation after generation, conversation after conversation, until someone finally refuses to pass it on. Perhaps that is what Shiva represents. Not someone who never experienced suffering, but someone who refused to let suffering become his identity. He didn't deny the poison. He didn't pretend it wasn't there. He simply refused to let it reach his heart. Modern psychology has discovered something remarkably similar. Researchers have found that painful experiences don't automatically define us. What shapes our future isn't only what happened, but how we process what happened. Two people can experience the same tragedy. One becomes consumed by it, the other grows wiser because of it. The event is the same. The response changes everything. Maybe that's why Shiva didn't destroy the poison. Because some forms of pain cannot be erased. They can only be transformed. And perhaps that is what emotional maturity truly means. Not living without pain, but learning how to carry it, without allowing it to become hatred, without allowing it to become cruelty, without allowing it to become the reason someone else suffers. The ancient story isn't asking us to become invincible. It's asking us to become responsible. Responsible for what we do with the poison we've been given. And once the poison was contained, something extraordinary began to happen. The ocean, which had seemed so dangerous, started revealing treasures beyond imagination, which raises one final question. If the poison represents our suffering, then what is the nectar? Once the poison had been contained, the ocean began to change. One by one, extraordinary treasures emerged. The celestial cow, the wish-fulfilling tree, the goddess Lakshmi, the radiant moon. Each treasure represented abundance, beauty, wisdom, and harmony. Then, at last, the ocean revealed what everyone had been searching for. The Amrita, the nectar of immortality. For centuries, people believed this was the reward, the ultimate prize, the goal of the entire story. But ask yourself something. If this story is really about the human mind, what could immortality possibly mean? Surely it isn't about living forever, because every human being knows our bodies are temporary. Perhaps the ancient sages were pointing toward a different kind of immortality. Not a body that never dies, but a mind that is no longer ruled by fear. Think about the people you admire most, not because they were famous or wealthy, but because they remained calm when everyone else panicked. They forgave when revenge seemed easier. They stood for truth when lies were more convenient. They carried pain without becoming bitter. What made them different? Perhaps they had already found the nectar, not something they drank, but something they became. Modern life tells us that freedom comes from controlling the world around us. Earn more, own more, achieve more, become more successful. Then you'll finally feel at peace. But how often does it actually work? You reach one goal, only to chase another. You solve one problem, only to discover a new one. The finish line keeps moving. The ancient story offers a completely different perspective. Real freedom doesn't begin when the world finally gives you everything you want. It begins when the world can no longer take away who you are. That is the nectar. The moment your peace no longer depends on praise. The moment your identity no longer depends on success. The moment another person's anger no longer controls your emotions. The moment fear no longer decides your future. That is a form of immortality, because circumstances change, people change, your body changes, but something deeper remains untouched. Maybe that is what the sages wanted us to discover all along. The ocean was never somewhere far away. It has always been inside you. The Devas are every noble thought you've ever had. The Asuras are every impulse that pulls you away from your highest self. The mountain is the discipline required to keep turning inward. The serpent is the constant effort that transformation demands. The poison is every wound you've tried to bury. And the nectar is the person you become after facing all of it. Perhaps this is why the story has survived for thousands of years, not because people wanted to remember an ancient myth, but because every generation discovers that the real battle has never been outside. It has always been within. Tomorrow morning, nothing around you may look different. The same alarm will ring. The same people will cross your path. The same responsibilities will be waiting. But something invisible will happen. The ocean will begin to move again. Every difficult conversation, another turn of the mountain, every temptation, another pull of the rope. Every moment you choose understanding over anger, another drop of poison transformed. Every act of courage, another treasure rising from the depths. The churning never ends, because growth never ends. And maybe that is the true meaning of this ancient story. Not that somewhere in the distant past, gods and demons churned a cosmic ocean, but that every single day, inside every human being, the ocean is still being churned. The question is no longer whether the ocean exists. The question is, when the poison rises, who will you become? Will you pass it on, or will you transform it into wisdom? Because in the end, the greatest treasure was never hidden beneath the ocean. It has always been waiting within you. If this story changed the way you see yourself, then this is only the beginning. Every week, we explore timeless wisdom from the Vedas, Upanishads, and Puranas, not as stories from the past, but as mirrors for the human mind and guides for living with greater clarity, purpose, and inner freedom. Until next time, keep exploring the oldest wisdom to better understand the person you are becoming.